I think the other question that you're raising is the question of the fact that, particularly from the Baha'i perspective, we talk about the unknowable God. We say that the essence of God is unknowable. But at the same time, we talk about a personal God, which seems that there's more emphasis of that, or at least some people think there's more emphasis on the personal God in Christianity. I think this is somewhat a misperception among people. Now, on the question of unknowable God, Baha'is say that the essence of God, the nature of God, is unknowable for us as humans. The passage here from the Baha'i writing says that that which we imagine is not the reality of God. He, the unknowable, the unthinkable, is far beyond the highest conception of man. So that's what we mean when we said He is unknowable. We with our limited minds, with limited thinking, we cannot really fathom the nature of God. What we can understand from God, according to Baha'i writings, is the embodiment of virtues. The Baha'i months is based on the name of virtues. All these attributes of kindness and compassion and gentility and purity and justice, we see these as attributes of God. And whoever can really embody these attributes basically has part of God in him. So in effect it becomes a dichotomy. In one level, we cannot understand the nature of God. In the other, He becomes a personal God. So in that respect, let me actually read a few passages from different scriptures on the question of what we can call a personal God. For example, in Christianity, we read that God is not far from each one of us, for in Him we live and move and have our being. So in effect, here we see, Jesus says that God is here with us. So that is the personal God aspect. In Islam, he says, "Heaven and earth contain me not, but the heart of my faithful servant contains me." So again, he says that, you are part of God, that we as human beings are part of God. In Hinduism, it says that truly do I exist in all beings, but I'm most manifest in man. God is most manifest in man. The human heart is my favorite dwelling place. This is in Hinduism. Another passage from Judaism. Moses says that I dwell in the high and holy place, and also with him who is of a contrite and humble spirit. So in effect, Judaism says that God resides in humble and good people. So this is the idea of the personal God. And then we have similar writings in the Baha'i writings, where, for example, Baha'u'llah says, "Thy heart is my home. Sanctify it for my descent. Thy spirit is my place of revelation. Cleanse it for my manifestation." So the unknowable God and a personal God. You see, sometimes when we talk about these things in isolation, one without the other, it can create a confusion in people's mind and say that my religion says this, your religion is something different. But we as Baha'is particularly believe that we have to understand the dynamics of it and understand that because this is one God, He has sent different messengers, have given them the same truth in different fashions. And particularly when we are able to compare and bring them together, we see the beauty of reality, of the oneness of God and oneness of His teachings. That's absolutely wonderful. That's a good question. You're saying that if all of these prophets, all of these manifestations of God have come for the sake of unity and harmony and oneness of mankind, then why don't they speak in a language that everyone can understand, right? Right? That's a good question. Why? Well, it seems to me, based on particularly the writings of the Baha'i faith and explanations of Abu Baha in some answered questions, that God has given us a choice, and that is free will. You know, we can become like angels, we can become like the basest animals. For one thing, that is a choice that He has given us. But now, that is not through meanness. That is through His grace. That, okay, I created you in my image, and everything that I have given you is pure and is perfect. But then you need to work on it. You need to work on it on this planet Earth while you live on this earth to perfect it, to make it better and better. That part is your choice. And if you look at the history of man, you will see that that has been gradual progression. You know, as Moses came, as Jesus came, as Krishna came, and Buddha came, and Muhammad came, until the time of Baha'u'llah, step by step, it is like the first grade and the second grade and third grade. These manifestations of God were teaching us. Now, why didn't everybody accept? Why didn't everybody agree? That is where these manifestations of God tell us that we need to purify ourselves. We need to become detached. We need to become humble. If everybody did, they would all come to the same understanding. This is where, now that I'm associating with people of goodwill, I have no argument with them, no matter what path they have. You know, that's why a lot of my friends are from Unity Group or Unitarian Group, Universalist groups, Jews, enlightened Jews, and Sufis. With them, wherever it comes to a point where we say that, they say that, no, this is what we believe, this is your belief, I say that's probably because of my misunderstanding, because we are coming to that reality of oneness, and in that oneness and unity, there is no difference. That could be because of semantics. And this is where Baha'i faith tells us we need to struggle. Muhammad told us we need to struggle, jihad. We need to struggle and search to be able to find the truth, to find the real truth. I just found a passage from Abu Baha. He says the foundations of all the divine religions are peace and agreement. But misunderstanding and ignorance have developed. If these are caused to disappear, you will see that all the religious agencies will work for peace and promulgate the oneness of mankind. For the foundation of all is reality, and reality is not multiple or divisible. His Holiness Moses founded it. His Holiness Jesus raised its tent, and its brilliant light has shone forth in all the religions. His Holiness Baha'u'llah proclaimed this one reality and has spread the message of the most great peace. So then essentially then, they have all come for this peace. Some people don't understand it because they dwell on their lower side. Baha'u'llah tells us in man there are two natures. He's a spiritual or higher nature, and he's material or lower nature. In one he approaches God, in the other he lives for the world alone. Our attempt, the attempt of those people who understand that reality, is to help mankind touch on their higher side until they become totally harmonized and unified and one with themselves and therefore one with God and all religions of the earth. Well, that's another good thought. You're saying that, well, are you saying that you have found the truth and you know the truth and you know better than your friends who could be Jew or Christian or Muslim or of no religion and this and that? That's a good question. God forbid, if I made that impression, I apologize. Because I have come across so many good people from all across the globe, from all faiths and no faith at all, that I'm here to admit that they have understood that reality much better than I have. And who am I to say that, no, this fellow or that fellow knows less or have understood less than I have? No, not at all. I never forget a passage from Abdul Baha in Esselmont. You know, Esselmont was an early British believer who wrote the book Baha'u'llah in the New Era. And he quotes Abdul Baha around the page 180 or 181, that he says, there are many who have not even heard of the name Baha'u'llah, but they have understood the reality of this message, which is the same message of Jesus, or Muhammad, or Baha, or Moses, or Buddha, or Krishna, or Zoroaster, which is the oneness of God, oneness of man, oneness of the essence of religion. Now, Allah says that there are many who have really understood this message. But there are many of you Baha'is who may call yourself Baha'i for 50 years, but you have not really understood it. And he says, ultimately, name his name. Baha'i, Christian, Methodist, Baptist, whatever. It's a name. But have I reached that point of unity in myself, in my heart, in truly believing that when I go to a unity church, when I go to a Unitarian church, when I go to Episcopal church or Methodist church, do I see the face of God? Do I try to practice what Baha'u'llah teaches us, what Jesus taught us, of oneness, of wholeness, of kindness, of gentility, of compassion? That is 99% of the challenge. The rest is up to Him. He guides us to reach that point of unity. But we have to practice it within our heart, within our soul. This is what I'm trying to do, the best I can. Well, that's another good question. You say that, are you saying, God forbid, that Baha'i faith is at a higher level as compared to another religion? And then I mentioned something to the extent that, it's just like different classes, first grade and second grade and so on and so forth. I think probably this is a little misunderstanding, because in one sense, Baha'u'llah explains over and over again that all manifestations of God have one station. They are all like the same sun of reality. But he explains that intensity of the light may be different. It is the same sun, but the heat of the sun of 8 o'clock in the morning, and then 10 and noon, and then in the afternoon is different. That, God forbid, does not mean that any manifestation of God, from Moses to Jesus to Muhammad, Baha'u'llah, Zoroaster, Buddha and Krishna, but any different in terms of their station. It is because mankind in general has been in different stages. When you say that man was, of 3,000 years ago, was not as educated, as understanding, as the man of today, that's a reality. We're not talking about the station of prophets to be any different from 3,000 years ago to the present. In the sight of God, they're all His messengers. They're one soul in different bodies. I think I can probably find a passage from Baha'u'llah. It's actually this passage from Baha'u'llah. He says, any apparent variation in the intensity of the light of manifestations, is not inherent in the light itself, but should rather be attributed to the varying receptivity of an ever-changing world. Every prophet whom the Almighty and peerless Creator hath purposed to send to the peoples of the earth hath been entrusted with the message and charged to act in a manner that would best meet the requirements of the age in which he appeared, God's purpose in sending his prophets unto men is twofold. The first is to liberate the children of men from the darkness of ignorance and guide them to the light of true understanding. The second is to ensure the peace and tranquility of mankind and provide all the means by which they can be established. They all have the same purpose: to bring us forward to a higher level. They all knew everything from the very beginning, but they gave us one portion at a time as they could understand better and better. Let me elaborate on this question. The fact that is, in one sense, we can say the message of all the prophets' manifestation of God is the same. But on the other hand, there are variations. When we say it's the same, it is all the moral principles of all religions is one and the same, from the same God. But the needs of the time is different. So therefore, the essential message is the same, but it has been modified from the time of Moses to Jesus to Muhammad to Baha'u'llah. It has been modified because of the change of the time. I think there's a passage here from the Baha'i writings I can refer to. It says that the measure of the revelation of the prophets of God in this world must differ. Baha'u'llah says that the measure must differ. Each and every one of them has been the bearer of a distinct message and has been commissioned to reveal himself through specific acts. It is for this reason that they appear to vary in their greatness. They're all the same. But because the message improves, because man changes, some people may think that one prophet is greater than the other. No, they're all one and the same. Their revelation may be likened unto the light of the moon that sheddeth his radiance upon the earth. Though every time it appeareth, it revealeth a fresh measure of its brightness, yet its inherent splendor can never diminish, nor can its light suffer extinction. It is the same moon, it is the same sun that appears at different time, and therefore the intensity of the light may be different, but their essential message is one and the same. That's probably another relevant question, that why all these wars and strife and all of that. Please, my friend, don't blame God and manifestation God for these things. This is because of our limitations. This is because of our lower side. This is because of the fact that we have not humbled ourselves before God. This because we have not detached ourselves. We have not purified our heart. We have not sanctified ourselves to love one another, which is the message of Jesus and Baha'u'llah and Buddha and all the rest. That's the same essential message. This is us who have created these divisions. Let me find a passage from Baha'u'llah. That's, I think, right along the line of what we're asking. He says, the purpose of religion, as revealed from the heaven of God's holy will, is to establish unity and concord amongst the people of the world. Make it not the cause of dissension and strife. The religion of God and his divine law are the most potent instruments and the surest of all means for the dawning of the light of unity amongst men. That is his purpose. And he reveals himself over and over again, approximately once every 1,000 years, until we all get it, that we are all children of the same God, that the purpose is unity and love, nothing else. You're asking on the vision of the Baha'i faith and oneness of religion. Based on what I've read, particularly in interpretations and writings of Abdul Baha, when the Baha'i faith talks about oneness of religion, we really mean it. And we as Baha'is should really practice it. And that practice was really the lesson of Abdul Baha, which means we need to go to churches and synagogues and mosques with total humility in bonding with people of all faiths. That's what the message is. In the spirit of amity and concord. In total harmony, in total unity. This is the message. This is the vision. Because we believe truth is one. And we see it in all good people. We see it in all faiths. We see it in all places of worship. And we need to really practice it. Let me just see if there's a passage from Abu Baha's writings in this regard. And he says, light is good in whatsoever lamp it is burning. A rose is beautiful in whatsoever garden it may bloom. A star has the same radiance if it shines from the east or from the west. Be free from prejudice. So will you love the Son of Truth from whatsoever point in the horizon it may arise. And then he goes on and says seek the truth. The truth shall make you free. So shall we see the truth in all religions. For truth is in all, and truth is one. You know, if we claim we are Baha'is, we have to believe in the oneness of religion, in the oneness of this truth, and from any scripture which is read, it is our scripture. And when we totally realize this and practice it, then we have internalized the idea and the ideal that God is one, man is one, and all the religions are essentially one. Thank you for that question. You're making this subject a little difficult for me to explain in a way, but I'll try. You say that if you really believe in oneness of religion and oneness of all faiths, why do you call yourself a Baha'i? Right? Is that your question? Well, let me try to explain it in this manner. That Baha'i, in one sense, means the follower of Baha'u'llah. But the real meaning of Baha'i is the follower of light. When you say Baha'i, it means follower of light. And Abu Baha said that we follow the light in whatever lamp it shines. So when I'm the follower of light, I'm always in search of truth. Continue with this search. And when I go to places as I'm a Baha'i, it means that I'm following the light, which is the same one God, which is shining in whatever lamp it shines. At least that's the way I understand it. One of the important topics in all religions is the question of covenant. This has been further emphasized in the Baha'i faith as well. And in this segment I'm going to share with you quickly the sources of the covenant. Of course, Baha'u'llah speaks about the greater covenant, which means that approximately every 1,000 years there's a new manifestation which fulfills the promises of prior manifestations, and that all religions are like chapters of the same book. But then he also talks about the lesser covenant, which means that in every dispensation there's a system set up so that deviations would not occur. But this, of course, did not happen the way it was supposed to in prior religions, because manifestations of God did not have a written will, and therefore right after their departure, division within the faith began. In the Baha'i faith, that problem is resolved and is confronted, and Baha'u'llah has made provisions so that that will not happen in this faith. And that begins with Lower Act of Baha'u'llah's covenant with his followers, that right after his passing, the interpretation of his writings would be solely the authority of his eldest son Abu Baha. And that legacy continues. And right after the passing of Abu Baha in 1921, of course Abu Baha had his will and testament. And we have Abu Baha's will and testament, so that after his passing, the authority for interpretation of the writings and protection of the faith would be in the hands of his eldest grandson, Shoghi Effendi. Now, the charter of the covenant and the Baha'i administrative order is perhaps best described in one of Shoghi Effendi's works, which is called The Dispensation of Baha'u'llah. Now, to cover the question of covenant and protection of the covenant, and therefore avoiding any and all kinds of divisions within the faith, a number of prominent Baha'i authors have collected all the related writings and evidence with regard to what happens for those who deviate from this covenant of God, which means try to create a division within the faith. And Baha'u'llah has promised that this is virtually impossible in this dispensation, that those who attempt it would be basically walk in a self-destructive path. We don't have any enmity toward them, but in effect it is a pity, and we pity them for the course that they take, which is a self-destructive path. Because through this covenant, eventually this unity within the faith will contribute to the unity of the entire human race under the banners of oneness of the humankind and oneness of religion under one God. Now, the authors of those significant works with regard to the question of covenant, one is Adib Taherzadeh, who has written this fascinating book, The Covenant of Baha'u'llah, and discussing the fate of those who deviated from the covenant. Beyond this, Adib Taherzadeh wrote a second book, which brings us up to date through the life of Shoghi Effendi and beyond, and he called this The Child of the Covenant, which is another important read, primarily the course of the ministry of Shoghi Effendi and the question of the protection of the covenant. Now, another Baha'i scholar, Shaheen Wafai, later collected sort of a condensed version of what we saw here, which is called The Essence of the Covenant, which is also another important read, up through the bringing up to date through the ministry of the Hands of the Cause, and from 1963 the Universal Justice, and some of the counsels and advice of the Universal Justice with regard to dealing with covenant breaking, or those who deviate from the covenant, and how they should be dealt with, through counseling and advice, and leading them to the Baha'i institutions, and so on. On top of all that, there is a 3-book series called The Covenant of Baha'u'llah, part of the Ruhi book series, book 8, which covers all of this, particularly with regard to the will and testament of Baha'u'llah, Abdul Baha, some of the writings of Shoghi Effendi, the question of administrative order, the question of protection of the faith through the institution of Hand of the Cause, and the councillors and auxiliary board members, and brings us up to date in this regard, and how the Baha'i administration works through the institutions and through our regular 19-day feast to maintain the cohesiveness of this beloved faith. Thank you for your attention. Well, you raised this question that, based on everything you've seen from the Baha'i writings, is, it's beautiful, it's perfect. The hidden words of Baha'u'llah, the 7 values of Baha'u'llah, the 4 values, the gleanings of Baha'u'llah's writings. You have read many of these writings. Abdul Baha's writings, Promulgation of Universal Peace, some answer questions. So many writings that you refer to, but then again you say that you have come across some Baha'is who don't abide by all of these laws and rules, and mainly the mystic writings of purity and justice and sanctity and pure heart and all of that. And then as you're saying, how do I reconcile that? Well, How do I reconcile that? I'm first to admit, my friend, that I'm not perfect. I'm a fallible human being. I have many faults. But then I tell myself that if I'm a Baha'i and I come to the realization that I've made many mistakes, first I have to realize this with humility and ask God for forgiveness. And second, I hope that if I claim to be Baha'i, to walk in his path of service and humility and what he calls truthfulness and upright character. But then my suggestion to you, my friend, is that if you see these imperfections in the Baha'i faith, don't blame either Jesus or Baha'u'llah or any of the manifestations of God. This is because of our limitations. Plus the fact that we know that we live in a corrupt society, no matter where we are. Some places are better, some places are worse. In terms of, alcohol and drugs and sex and abuse and lying and cheating and extremes of wealth and poverty, and everybody trying to have his own interests and all these things, which is the lower part of human nature. Many of us, all of us, as Baha'is may have some of those characteristics too, because we live in this society. But what Baha'is and what all religions have attempted for during the course of human history is to free us from this lower side and bring us upper to a higher side, elevate us to what we are meant to be. So my strong suggestion to you is that keep looking at the purity of the teachings, and whatever imperfections you see in human beings who attribute themselves, connect themselves to the Baha'i faith, know that it is their fault. It is not the fault of the faith itself, or any other faith for that matter. I think you were there in the Baha'i Center last week when I spoke about the meaning of faith from the Baha'i perspective. This was a half-hour talk, but we want to see if we can condense it to 3-4 minutes as to what it really means. I like to say that faith begins, based on what Baha'u'llah says in the very beginning of the book of the hidden words, begins with a pure heart. We have to have a pure heart. Then, as we see in the first page of the book of Certitude, then we have to have a sanctified soul. So our heart needs to be pure, our spirit needs to be sanctified. And then with that, we go on the path of faith. Now, a lot of people, sincere, good-intentioned people, think that they believe because they were so told by parents, by mentors, by teachers, by preachers, by church, and therefore whatever it says in the Holy Book, whatever the Holy Book is. And they say, we believe, I believe. And I never forget a very sincere Jehovah's Witness lady and a couple of men came and knocked at the door, and they said very sincerely that we used to live to be 900 years old, but not anymore. What happened? I said, what? When did we live to be 900 years old? And she opened the Bible and said, right here, right here. We used to, that's the Word of God, and we used to live 900 years to be 900. And then there's so many others. I remember when I was in Iran, I was in high school, and this boy came to me and said that Muhammad cut the moon in half. She said, Shaq al-Qamar. And so I said, what? Where did you say that? And he says, that's in Quran. So at that point, I didn't know what to say. How can I talk to somebody who reads the Holy Book literally and says that that's what the Word of God is, and therefore that's what I need to believe? Or so many people, including those Jehovah's Witness friends, who would open the book and would say that, God created the world in 6 days, and on 7th day He rested, and then He created man, and woman was was created from the left rib of man, and so many things like that. Or Moses threw his stick and it became a snake, or Moses threw his stick and it parted the sea, and all of that, and they literally believe in these things. Is that good enough? No, I don't think so. What happens with a mindset like that, that leads to prejudices, that leads to superstitions, that leads to thousands of unfounded dogmas. And with that, there is that indoctrination, there is hatred, there is lack of tolerance. Because they believe, and they believe firmly in whatever they were told without their minds really accepting it. They're forced into accepting things which don't make sense. But God has given us brain, has given us the soul to think for ourselves, to decide for ourselves what makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, with a pure heart, with a detached soul, then it doesn't make sense. We need to look for the deeper meaning of that. And that's why the first principle of faith in the Baha'i faith, according to writings of Baha'u'llah and Abdul Baha, is conscious knowledge. Conscious knowledge, which means search for yourself without imitating anybody, and God will help you understand the truth and reality of things. But then when we truly search and truly find out the truth based on what really makes sense, then he says that's not good enough. Jesus said the same thing. That has to be complemented with deeds. We have to have good deeds in order to be worthy of saying that I believe in the manifestation of God. So this is really what I understood from this. And then when I read further and further, then it seems that even that is not good enough. Then the next step, according to what Baha'u'llah says in the first page of the most holy book, Kitab al-Abbas, he says that needs to be complemented with obeying the laws of God. At that point, when we really understand that this is the Word of God, that I have accepted it, that I try to do my best to be a good human being in serving the humankind, then the next step is obeying the laws. Which means when you tell me that I need to pray, I need to pray. To continue to remain humble, to continue to remain on the path, on the straight path. And when we do all of that, this obeying of the laws is that 110 pages of the book. Word for word we have to go and follow. Now that doesn't mean that's the end of our search. We as human beings, we have questions. There are many things that we still may have questions from the most holy book, from all the holy writings. We need to continue to ask questions until everything makes sense. And all the old scriptures, the passages that I shared with you, the way we understand it as Baha'is is that for one thing, this was the age when human beings were like children. We could not understand the higher reality, so they need to give us parables and stories and to make us understand step by step, step by step. But at this age, and we are reaching the age of maturity of man, everything needs to be challenged. And even those writings, Baha'u'llah allowed us to ask him questions. And then after he passed away, he told us, go to the center of the covenant, his eldest son Abdul Baha, and keep asking questions until it makes sense to you. And after that, then of course Shoghi Effendi, the guardian of the faith, and today the Universal House of Justice, which is universally, democratically elected, but then all we Baha'is obey them. And so therefore they would elucidate, they would try to clarify whatever does not make sense to us. I hope this answered the question. Thank you. You're asking the question that, okay, well, it is true that at this point millions of people are educated, they can think for themselves, they can decide for themselves, but well, what about illiterate people? What about people who don't have that knowledge and understanding? Well, that's a good question. But I think the answer that Baha'u'llah gives us is more clear. Now, I guess we're stuck in some ways with academic education. Academic education, of course, is necessary and is good, and it helps the mind to blossom and understand better. But the real point is what I said at the beginning of my earlier talk. The more important point is the purity of the heart, is sanctification of the soul. And then, no matter what level of education you have, God helps you understand. God helps you understand the deeper meaning of things. So that is more essential than having a college degree or a master's degree or a doctoral degree. That is more essential. I've come across so many people all across the globe who did not have high level of education, but who were the most pure and the most understanding and the most perceptive kind of people. So that is really the answer. Purity of the heart and sanctification of the soul and detachment and willingness to go and with humility to God and ask Him for answers, and He will provide the answers. Nothing should be forced on the human mind. Nothing that makes sense should be forced on the human mind, whether that person is a child or is a grown-up, at this age of maturity of mankind altogether. Well, you want clarification on what I just said. In saying that still, there are people who are not only on terms of education, but they just don't understand, and then it seems to me too much of a burden to put it all on that person, that you need to find it for yourself and you need to keep things for yourself. I'd like to add to this that educators and teachers and mentors are always welcome. It's not that we don't need teachers. There are teachers that are all through history. In addition to prophets of God, we have had great mentors all across the globe, from Socrates and Plato and Aristotle and Voltaire up through the present age, and people who have been leaders like Gandhi and Mother Teresa and Martin Luther King and Nelson Mandela. They have all been mentors, but they have got the real light from manifestations of God, from God Himself, a manifestation of God. And then with that light, they have been able to better elaborate and help humankind in search for truth and in better understanding. So I welcome that question, and I think that clarification was also necessary. You're asking the question that why is it, how is it that so many Baha'is in the Middle East who could just say, I'm not a Baha'i, and they would let them go. They to the last drop of their blood, they don't recant, and they say that this is my faith, I'm a Baha'i. The first principle, one of the most important principles of the Baha'i faith, is truthfulness, and avoiding of lying and deceit under any circumstances for changing the world. And somebody who has seen the truth of Baha'u'llah and the Baha'i faith does not like to let go because of living a few more years. Nobody likes to die, nobody likes to be killed. But if it comes to that, the choice for people of faith, Baha'is, and just like the early Christians, has always been obvious. We don't trade these few years for that everlasting life. And something even deeper than that. You do it for the love of God. You do it for the love of truth, which is more important than your body, than your life on this earth. This is even more important. Let me just see if I can find a passage from Baha'u'llah. That's in the words. He says, "O my servant, abandon not for that which perisheth an everlasting dominion, and cast not away celestial sovereignty for a worldly desire. This is the river of everlasting life. that hath flowed from the wellspring of the pen of the merciful. Well is it with them that drink. I may have shared with you the story of my wife's grandfather, who was a citizen of the city of Yazd, and he was a lover of Baha'u'llah. And every day in the morning when he went, he was 50 years old, and he went to work, to bazaar, he would chant prayers from Baha'u'llah and Abdu'l-Baha. This was the time of Abdu'l-Baha. And chanted loudly early in the morning and late at night, until some Muslim fanatics found out that he's a Baha'i, and they followed him one night as he was going home and chanting prayers. They followed him, burned his house to the ground, and then they stoned him. They stabbed him, and then they stoned him as he was running, trying to run away from them, and killed him. But then, and so he had his wife and 2 children who were in their early teens. They were stranded, and so they went and fled the scene, and they stayed with their family members who were not Baha'is for a while. And then finally they left the city and walked and rode donkeys for months and months until they reached the city of Rafsanjan, hundreds of miles away. And of course, they had followed again the law of Baha'u'llah and Abdu'l-Baha, that we don't hold any grudges. We still love them. We love our enemies. We still want them to be rehabilitated, to come to the 21st century, to 20th century at that time. And therefore they went there and started a life, a brutal life, very difficult life. Her father worked as a construction helper here and there, and in farms, until after several years he could buy a lot, and he purchased the lot, and he tried to raise pistachio trees, and that by itself also requires patience. It takes 7 years until a pistachio tree becomes a tree and then starts flowering and blooming fruits, which is pistachio. So he waited and waited until then, and then lo and behold, the chief killer of this group who had attacked him comes all this way to Rafsanjan, finds their house, knocks at the door. They open the door, this boy and girl, and the mother was there. And he falls to the ground weeping and saying that he has found the truth of Baha'u'llah's mission, and that he has come to repent and ask for forgiveness. They had already forgiven him, but he repented, and then he has found the truth of Baha'u'llah, and he became a Baha'i. This is how thousands of people in Iran who have a good heart, who have been misled by a brutal clergy, they have gradually been transformed from within, and they accept the truth of Baha'u'llah's mission, which is the same mission. But humanity, when it reaches that point of hatred of something which is new, hatred which is something which is the truth of the age, that's how one by one are transformed. And since the beginning of Islamic revolution, I've come across many Iranians who used to, even if they wanted to mention the name Baha'i, they would say, Baha'i. Very in low voice, this guy is a Baha'i. Not only, they're proud of having friendship among Baha'is. I have many friends who are Muslims, and many of them unfortunately have become ex-Muslims because they say we cannot tolerate and accept this way of the practice of Islam. And Baha'u'llah's mission is transformation of human mind and human heart and human soul until we understand that we are all brothers and sisters. That, as Baha'u'llah said, this span of the earth is one country and mankind its citizens. That we all need to purify our heart. We all need to sanctify our spirit. Well, the question that you're asking now is that if the Baha'i faith has brought the message of love and compassion and unity and renewal of religion. Why is it that they kill Baha'is right and left in the Middle East? Why so much persecution? Why? Why? That's what many of us as Baha'is have asked ourselves for years and years. But when you really reflect on it, we see that this has been the way it has been all through history of man. Particularly when you look at the growth of Christianity at the beginning of Christianity, for the first 300 years. It's so much parallel and so much similar to the life of Baha'is. Because it's a drastic change from a culture of belonging to a group and everybody else is the enemy, and basically it makes you selfish and want to get rid of anything which is different from you, and therefore clash of old and new. Prejudice and superstitions against something which is shining light on this darkness, on this amazing darkness. Because hatred and animosity is nothing but darkness of human soul. And the way of truth, the way of Jesus and Buddha and the Baba and Baha'u'llah and all their followers, like Gandhi and Martin Luther King and Tahir and Qudus and Mullah Hussain and thousands of others in the Baha'i faith, has been what? Has been patience, has been giving love instead of hate, has been loving thy enemy as Jesus has told us. Nothing else works. And that is the process of gradual transformation of the humankind. Let's look at the hidden words. Let's look at the hidden words and what Baha'u'llah tells us. Baha'u'llah says, O son of man, for everything there is a sign. The sign of love is fortitude under my decree and patience under my trials. And this is, God is trying us. Are we sincere? Are we patient under His trials? Because through these trials, we are transformed and the world is transformed. And He says, O son of man, the true lover yearneth for tribulation, even as doth the rebel for forgiveness, and the sinful for mercy. He says, we say, God, whatever is your will is my will. If that's the path that I have to go through in order to transform myself and the humankind, whatever comes from you is a blessing. And I don't argue with that. Let me read one more from the hidden words. He says, O son of man, if adversity befall thee, not in my path, how canst thou walk in the ways of them that are content with my pleasure? If trials afflict thee not in thy longing to meet me, how wilt thou attain delight in thy love for my beauty? If we really love God, if we love our fellow human beings, even those who pretend that they are our enemies, we're not their enemies. We are the lovers. We have to be patient. We have to be forbearing. We have to be content under His trials until the world has changed. That has been the eternal, everlasting way. And gradually, one by one, people change. People change. The question of wealth and those who spend lots of time accumulating wealth and then wanting to do good is in some ways a difficult question. Again, manifests of God tell us that the poor are my trust. That's one lesson. The other lesson that Baha'u'llah tells us, that rich but for a few can really reach Him. So wealth in many ways becomes a barrier. So for those who accumulate wealth for the sake of helping their fellow man. That intention is very praiseworthy. But according to Baha'u'llah and other manifestations of God, wealthy but for a few can have that pure intention, can really work in that regard, which is very praiseworthy. But for the rest of us mortals, it is perhaps best if we don't run all our lives in accumulating and then leaving it and say, okay, well, I've accumulated 1 million, 10 million, and this and that. And then while we're here, do our best to help others. Do our best to feed our family and help others. So if we reach that level, I think that we reach that pinnacle of success, both here and then when we pass on. Well, the question that you're raising is that why do Baha'is claim that these teachings are appropriate and suitable for the world, and you bring the question of economics, and that economics and religious mores, that some areas of the world they are comfortable with having 4 wives or 10 wives or 20 wives. They're comfortable with covering themselves or their women completely. They're comfortable with one man taking care of 40, 50 women as his wives and his household. They may be comfortable with genital mutilation in parts of Africa. There are villages which they have a way of life which is the way of life of 2,000, 3,000 years ago, and they're living in those conditions, and they say, no, that's fine, that's our lives. So, and you're saying then, because of that, then why do Baha'is claim that these are, let's say just as an example of economics, that these are the teachings for today, for all of us? Why do we say that these teachings are appropriate for everyone all across the planet, right? Is that your question? Well, it seems to me that the world in general has advanced. A good part of the world has not advanced and are still mired in the prejudices and superstitions and way of life of 1,000 years ago, 1,400 years ago, the period of dark ages. And because they haven't seen anything better, they say that that's what we want, that's what we're comfortable with. That's not a good enough answer for me. Our jobs as the responsible citizens of the world is to help them come to the 21st century. And yes, this is true. It takes a lot of effort on the part of those who claim that we want to promote an ever-advancing civilization, which is the claim of Baha'is. We want to promote an ever-advancing civilization. So in order for us to do that, we have to work on it. That's why many good people of faith from all faiths, including Baha'is, have different social and economic projects all across the globe. In Africa, in India, in South America, all these places. When the enlightened citizens of the world wake up, they have to do a lot more of these things. And yes, this is true. We have to bring them forth to the 21st century. We have to train them. We have to help educate them. We have to nurture them. And then at that point, we say that these are the teachings for everyone all across the planet. I hope this answers your question.